Welcome back to Tightwad Workshop. Today we'll be working on a commission project from one of my neighbours. Gwen has recently acquired this lovely 1957 Singer Model 99K sewing machine, but unfortunately the condition of its electrical wiring leaves a little bit to be desired. Now, I'm not usually the kind of guy to criticise other people's workmanship, but in this case I have to say I've seen better. Now, while Gwen is busy searching the internet for a more intact electric motor and light for this machine, we're going to bypass that electrical safety issue by transplanting this machine head into this treadle cabinet. Let's go ahead and make a start on that now. Our first task is to remove the machine from its portable case. We do this by flipping the machine up, then loosening the screws on these two hinges. Once we've loosened both of the hinge screws, the machine should lift straight off the case. Next, we can remove the electric light and motor. These are only held on by a single screw each, so it's a quick and easy job. Now we can slip the drive belt off the pulley and put the electrical parts in the carry case away for later. The treadle cabinet already has these two hinges, so let's see if the machine will fit. Unfortunately, the hinge spacing is different for this machine, and so I can only use one of the two hinges at the moment. I also don't like this huge gap at the back, but I do have a way to fix that. It'll be a lot easier to do the next few operations with the lid removed, so let's remove its screws and set it aside in a safe place for now. While we're at it, I'll also remove the cabinet's door. Now we can set the cabinet upside down on the workbench and remove this piece of plywood. This is mostly a splash guard to keep oil drips off your legs while you're using the machine. Now we can get in with a screwdriver and remove those hinges. Then we can flip the cabinet back over and line up the machine head's pulley with the treadle pulley. Once we've eyeballed the alignment, we can mark the new hinge position with a pencil. I'll be using these hinges instead of the original ones, because this type leaves a minimal gap between the machine and the cabinet. We will need to bore a countersink hole in the cabinet top to fit them, so I'll go ahead and mark the hole location. I'll use this Forstner bit to make the hole, and I'll be using this hand brace to drive it, because that'll let me work nice and slowly and sneak up on the correct depth. The Forstner bit has a little spike in its centre which we need to line up exactly with our pencil mark. This kind of bit makes a nice clean hole with a flat bottom, which is exactly what we need for these hinges. I'll stop here and check to see if the hole's deep enough. The hinge is still a little bit too high, so let's make that hole a bit deeper. That looks about right now, so I'll fit the other hinge in the same way. Next, we'll need to mark the hinge pin locations, and then saw out these slots so that the hinges can drop to their lowered position. I'll use a chisel to remove that waste material. As you can see, the hinges need this cutout to be able to work correctly. Now we can fit the hinges into the machine and get ready to drill the holes for their screws. Since I used the brace for the first set of holes, I'll use this egg beater drill for the screw holes. Now we can fit the screws and tighten them down with a screwdriver. That looks pretty good, so let's see if the machine will lower into the cabinet. It looks like the machine's hitting against the wood here, so we'll need to remove some material from the underside of the cabinet top to give it some clearance. I'll just remove a little bit of wood at a time, then retest the fit after each pass. So that should have fixed the hinge fouling problem. Let's try that again. Okay, so it looks like we need to cut this hole a little bit wider. The wooden veneer is flaking a bit here, so I'll cover it with this masking tape to prevent it from splitting. Then we can mark our cut line with a ruler, and I'll use this washer to mark a nice curve for the corner. Now we can use this jigsaw to cut out the waste. I'm using an 18 TPI hacksaw blade in the jigsaw. You'd normally use this kind of blade for cutting metal, but I'm hoping that the smaller teeth will leave the veneer edge undamaged. Okay, here's the moment of truth. Well, it looks like our veneer is undamaged, so now let's test the hinges again. Now we can take some measurements for the new front spacer board. I'll be cutting that out of this piece of thick plywood. Once we cut out the rough shape, we can test its fit. This plywood isn't as thick as the rest of the cabinet top, but that's okay, because I'll be using this nice finish grade plywood to match the grain direction in the cabinet top anyway. Once we've marked and cut out a piece to match our spacer board, we can glue those two pieces together as a sandwich. Use plenty of glue and make sure that all the edges are well covered. Then make sure that the two pieces are lined up correctly. You can't fix this after the glue's dried. Now I'll press them firmly together, then use some scrap chipboard and some heavy weights to hold that sandwich together until the glue dries. We will remove this squeezed out glue from the edges when we trim and smooth the edges off tomorrow. I've used this sanding block to smooth off the edges of our new plywood sandwich. So now we can fit it back into the cabinet and mark a line around the edge of the sewing machine's table. We will need to remove our top plywood layer from the edge to this line. This would be an easy job with a router, but since I don't own one of those, we'll use a knife and chisel instead. I'm making multiple cuts through the full thickness of our top plywood sheet, and then I'll carefully chip out the waste with a chisel. So after one more test fit, we can mark the hole locations for the front hinges, drill them, and fit the hinge screws. And if we've done everything right, this should work. That's still a little bit low at the back, so I'll add a piece of stick-on felt to the stopper plate to raise it up a little bit. Now we can fit the leather drive belt between our two pulleys. These are easy to find online. The belt passes around the big treadle pulley, then up through that hole on the right, and around the sewing machine's pulley. Unfortunately, I've made the cover board a little bit too long and the belt rubs on it here. Luckily, I also have a coping saw, so we'll just cut a little clearance gap here for the belt. Now we can mark the correct length for our drive belt. And once we've cut off the excess, we can make a hole for the staple. I've found that drilling this hole is the most reliable way to do it, because using a needle or a punch can often split the end of the leather. Now we can join the belt with the metal staple, and use some pliers to squeeze the staple flat. A brand new belt will stretch quite a bit when you start using the machine, so you're probably going to need to remove another 10mm or so from it after your first hour of use. Now we can oil up the machine. We'll start with the bobbin winder. You can probably get away with using a little bit less oil than that. Next, give each of the oiling holes along the top of the machine a drop of oil. Then remove the cover plate from this end of the machine and oil each of the pivots and sliding mechanisms underneath. I like to operate the presser foot lever to work the oil into that joint. Now we can tip up the machine and oil all of the lubrication holes and the shiny sliding joints that we can see. Now this machine is missing a few important components from this area. But luckily I've saved some parts from other machines that were beyond economic repair, so let's see if we have some suitable replacements. This isn't the correct presser foot for this machine, but it'll still work. The flat side of a sewing machine needle needs to go against this slot in the needle bar. Sometimes it can be tricky to fit the needle clamp around the parts, and I know it's extra hard to see with my fat fingers in the way. I'll just give that hand wheel a couple of turns to make sure that everything's moving freely and not jammed up anywhere. Now we're ready to wind the bobbin. This small hole on the bobbin needs to fit over this drive pin on the bobbin winder. Then we can push the winder arm down until it locks into place. Next, we'll need to turn this silver knob to unlock the hand wheel. This lets the hand wheel turn without making the needle move up and down. Now we can put a spool of thread on the machine, pass the thread through this thread guide, then around the bobbin winder's thread guide, like this, and finally through one of the side holes in the bobbin. Now hold the loose end of the thread with your left hand, then spin the hand wheel with your right hand and start working the treadle with your feet. The bobbin winder should snap open once the bobbin is full. Now you can cut the thread and remove the bobbin. Next, we'll open this hatch and insert the bobbin, holding it this way around. The bobbin thread needs to pass through this slot and underneath this metal spring. You can do that by using this motion. Now you can close the hatch, leaving the bobbin thread sticking out through this slot. Next, we'll turn the silver knob this way to lock the hand wheel. Now the needle will move up and down when we turn the wheel. I'll remove the red bobbin thread and use this blue thread for the top side of the machine. Pass the thread around the top thread guide, then hold it with your thumb like this while you pass it around the tensioner. Then catch this tiny spring and pass the thread underneath this hook. Now pass the thread through the hole in the take-up arm, then through this thread guide on the end plate. And finally through the needle bar thread guide, and we're ready to thread the needle. My eyes aren't so great these days, so this usually takes me at least 6 attempts. Pull the needle thread under the presser foot like this, then hold onto it while you turn the hand wheel to send the needle down and back up again. If everything is working correctly, you should now be able to use your scissors to bring up the bobbin thread through this hole in the needle plate. Now we're ready to sew a test piece. Those top stitches look nice and even, and you can tell that the thread tension is close to correct because the blue top thread isn't being pulled through to the back side of the fabric. When you're ready to pack the machine away, it's very important to derail the belt from the treadle pulley first. Then remove your needle thread from the spool pin, lift the machine head and the front cover plate, then fold the machine down into the cabinet and close the cover plate. Now you can close the cabinet lid and the door. Now normally I'd be applying a nice shellac finish to the cabinet at this point, but Gwyn wants to do that part of the job herself. She'll also be refinishing the portable case so that she can swap the machine back into it and use it in electric mode when she prefers to. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Tightwad Workshop is filmed in front of a live studio audience.